For 8 months, Diana Calloway had been firing people. Operations managers, regional directors, a logistics analyst who had been with the company for 11 years. One by one, she had called them into her office and ended their tenure at Calloway Freight Solutions, and one by one, the people who knew her, who had worked for her, who had respected her, had walked out of that building shaking their heads and saying the same thing. She has changed. Something happened to her. She has become someone else. They were right that something had happened. They were wrong about who had done it. Then Marcus Webb arrived, a widowed warehouse ops manager with a second-hand pickup and a daughter who packed her own lunch in a container with a rubber duck on the lid. He had applied for a junior coordinator position because the senior ones were all gone. He did not know, walking through those doors, that he was walking into the last 8 months of someone else's careful, patient, devastating plan. What he found instead was the truth. If you've ever been blamed for someone else's betrayal, drop a heart below and tell me what city you're watching from. The Calloway Freight Solutions building in Columbus was the kind of building that had been proud once. Marcus could see it in the bones of the place, the logo on the exterior that had been done in cast metal rather than vinyl. The kind of investment a company makes when it expects to be here in 30 years. The lobby atrium that opened 2 stories up to a skylight. The sort of architectural choice that said, "We are not temporary." The carpet in the hallway was wrong, too new and too cheap for the rest of it, like a patch on a quality coat. Somebody had replaced it recently and had replaced it badly. He was 20 minutes early for his interview, which gave him time to read a room. The room said, "Things have been going wrong here for a while." He had applied for a logistics coordinator position, junior, a step down from what he had run before, but the senior coordinator role had been eliminated in what the HR listing called a structural reorganization. And the 2 positions above that had been eliminated 3 months prior, and the one above that had been eliminated in the fall. He had done the math before he applied, and understood he was walking into a company that had been shedding experienced people at a rate that didn't suggest normal turnover. He had applied anyway, because Gracie's school was 3 blocks from this building, and Mrs. Adiemi next door would watch her in the mornings if he got the job, and Mrs. Adiemi charged $40 a day, and he needed something that let him be home by 6. He had prepared for the interview the way he prepared for everything that mattered, by looking at the available information carefully and thinking about what it meant. He had read the public filings, the trade press coverage of the restructuring, the LinkedIn profiles of the people who had left, 11 of them, in 8 months, each departure noted in the professional network with the careful language of people who had signed separation agreements and were choosing their words accordingly. What the public information said, in aggregate, a company that was operationally sound and financially performing below projection, with a CEO whose decision-making was being described by departing employees in private conversations. He had found 2 of them. In the comments of a logistics industry forum, as erratic and sometimes irrational. What the public information did not say? Why? What had changed? Whether the CEO's decisions were actually erratic or whether something else was happening. He had thought about that question on the drive to the interview. He had thought, erratic decisions in a previously competent executive, at scale, over a sustained period, correlated with consistent operational underperformance. That was not the profile of a person making bad choices. That was the profile of a person working from bad information. He had filed that thought and driven the rest of the way in the particular silence of someone who has formed a hypothesis and is waiting to see if the evidence supports it. The building had supported it in the first 4 minutes of his arrival. He did the math. He came in. The HR coordinator who met him in the lobby was a young woman named Petra, who had the watchful, careful manner of someone who had been through a series of difficult months and had developed a specific economy of expression as a result. She walked him to the interview room on the 2nd floor, offered him water, and said, "Just so you know, Ms., Calloway conducts all final interviews herself now. She didn't always. I just want you to be prepared for that." "Prepared how?" Marcus said. Petra seemed to be choosing something. "She asks different questions than you might expect," she said. He nodded and said nothing. Diana Calloway arrived 8 minutes late, which Marcus suspected was not usual for her. There was a quality to her lateness that was not habitual. The quality of a person who had been delayed by something she had not anticipated and was still managing the residue of it. She was 41, with the kind of focused presence that made a room register her before she spoke, and she sat down across from him and put a folder on the table that she didn't open, and looked at him with the directness of someone who had stopped performing interview courtesy several difficult months ago. "Marcus Webb," she said. "Former ops manager at Hartfield Logistics. You ran a 3-state distribution corridor for 4 years. Yes, and then you left. My wife was ill. I took time." She looked at him for a moment, the look of someone making a calculation. "How long?" 8 months. She died 2 years ago. I've done contract work since." Diana nodded once. Not with pity, he had learned to read the difference in the 26 months since Julia's death, between pity and acknowledgement, and Diana Calloway was doing the latter, which he found he could tolerate. "The role you've applied for is junior coordinator," she said. "You're overqualified." "I know. Why are you here?" He could have given her the version about the career pivot, about wanting something with growth potential, about the company's reputation. He gave her the true one because it was shorter. "My daughter's school is 3 blocks away. I need to be in that neighborhood. This is the job in that neighborhood." She looked at him for another moment, with an expression he couldn't quite name, something between recognition and something more complicated that he filed and moved on from. "The role involves managing inbound freight coordination for our Columbus hub," she said. "Tracking, discrepancy resolution, carrier relationship management." "I'll be direct. We've had difficulty maintaining coordinator staff at this level for the past year. Some of the difficulty is institutional. Some of it is that I have high standards for accuracy and low tolerance for errors that could have been prevented. I don't make preventable errors," Marcus said. "Everyone says that. Most people are wrong. I'm not." She looked at him again. The same look. "I'll need your decision by end of day," she said, and stood up, which meant the interview was over. He had the offer by noon. He started the following Monday. The Columbus hub was a medium-sized freight consolidation and distribution center on the east side of the city, not the company's largest operation, but a critical one, handling inbound volumes that fed 3 of the company's 5 regional routes. The coordinator before him had lasted 5 weeks. The one before that, 11, the one before that had been the 11-year veteran whose termination he'd read about in the trade press, a man named Gerald Oakes, who had apparently made a series of discrepancy calls that Diana Calloway had considered errors. Marcus pulled the discrepancy logs on his second day. He was not supposed to pull the discrepancy logs. They were above his coordinator level access, or they were supposed to be. But somebody had set the permissions wrong in the last reorganization, and the database showed him more than it should have. He looked at what he could see for 20 minutes, noted 3 things that bothered him, and then backed out and did not mention what he had seen. What he had seen was this: the discrepancies Gerald Oakes had been terminated for were not, as reported, the result of Oakes' errors. They were consistent with upstream data manipulation. The numbers had been changed before they reached Oakes' level. Oakes had called the discrepancies correctly given the data he had been given. The data he had been given had been wrong. He filed this in the part of his mind that kept records. He did his job. The first week was an orientation in what the hub looked like from the inside versus how it looked from the listings. It looked, from the listings, like a company in the middle of a difficult restructuring. It looked from the inside like a company in the middle of something more targeted. A company where the people who asked the right questions didn't last, and the people who looked the other way had survived the recent rounds, and the person who had been asking the right questions for the longest had been fired 11 weeks ago. Gerald Oakes. Marcus thought about this on the drive home every evening, with Gracie in the back seat doing her reading homework out loud, because she had decided that reading out loud was more efficient since it handled 2 assignments at once: her reading and his education about what was happening in the Clementine series. He thought about the numbers that had been wrong before they got to Oakes. He thought about what the wrong numbers were doing and where they were going. He thought about it the way he used to think about logistics puzzles, as a system, as a thing with rules and flows, as something that had a solution if you found the right angle. On Friday of the first week, Diana Calloway walked through the hub. Not an inspection visit, she didn't have a clipboard, Didn't have Petra or any of the senior staff with her. She walked through the way a person walks through a building they built and are losing, with the particular quality of attention that was not management and was not nostalgia, but was something in between. She stopped at the freight bay doors and looked at the incoming carrier schedule on the board, and then looked at Marcus, who was at the coordinator station logging the morning's inbound manifests. "How's the first week?" she said. "Instructive," he said. She looked at him. "Instructive how?" "The system's good. The data entry protocols are sound. The carrier relationships are intact. The issues are upstream." A silence. The particular quality of a silence that meant something had been said that was not expected. "Upstream," she said. "Yes." She looked at the freight board for a moment, then back at him. "Come to my office Monday morning," she said. 8 o'clock. She left. Marcus went back to the inbound manifests. He logged 3 more discrepancies, noted their upstream sources, and at 5 o'clock he drove to Gracie's school and picked her up, and listened to the Clementine chapter in the car, and stopped for groceries, and made dinner, and helped with math homework, and put Gracie to bed at 8:30. Then he sat at the kitchen table with a yellow legal pad and wrote down everything he had seen in the first week. He had learned to think this way from Julia, actually, not the logistics of it, the habit of writing things down when they were complicated. Julia had been a middle school science teacher, and she had kept a yellow legal pad on the kitchen counter, always current. Always the active record of whatever was in her head that needed tracking. Groceries, parent-teacher meetings, the side effects of the new medication, the things to ask the oncologist at Thursday's appointment. She had organized the last 18 months of her life on yellow legal pads, and Marcus had watched her do it, and had understood, watching her, that it was not the pads that held the information, it was the act of writing it down. The commitment of putting something in a form that could be examined and questioned and revised. He used yellow legal pads too now. He had bought a dozen of them the month after Julia died, in a grief-fogged hardware store trip that he did not fully remember, and they had been on the kitchen counter ever since, used and replaced, and used again. He started a new one the Sunday before his Monday meeting with Diana Calloway. What he knew, written down, the inbound data discrepancies followed a pattern. Quarterly, 30 to 60 days before the reconciliation period closed, a set of consolidation charges inflated in a way that was too consistent to be random. What he knew, the discrepancies Gerald Oaks had been terminated for, were downstream effects of upstream data that had been manipulated before it reached Oaks's level. What he knew, the manipulation was directional, always inflating a specific billing category, always by amounts that fell below the standard audit threshold. What he didn't know, where the manipulation originated, who had the system access, why it was structured the way it was, what it was for beyond the obvious financial motive. He drew a line across the page. Below the line he wrote, "What I don't know yet." The list below the line was longer. Gracie came downstairs at 7:30 in her pajamas and stood in the kitchen doorway looking at him with the expression she got when she had woken up, and the house felt different than usual. "You're up early," she said. "Couldn't sleep." She looked at the legal pad. "New job problem?" Something like that. She went to the cabinet and got the cereal and sat across from him at the kitchen table and ate with the focused quiet of a person who understood that some mornings were thinking mornings and that the right contribution to a thinking morning was not to interrupt the thinking. This was a thing she had learned from Julia, who had been a thinking morning person herself on the days before difficult parent-teacher conferences. When she was done, she put her bowl in the sink and said, from the doorway, "Is it the kind of problem you can fix?" He thought about it. "Yes," he said. "It's the kind that has a solution. I just don't have all of it yet." "But you'll get it," she said. "Yes," he said. "I'll get it." She went upstairs to get ready for Sunday school. He went back to the legal pad. The building he'd walked into was not, he understood by the end of the first week, a company in crisis. It was a company that had been made to look like a company in crisis, which was a different thing. The operations were intact. The carrier relationships were intact. The hub staff, the ones still there, were competent and, once they understood that the new coordinator was not there to evaluate them for the next round of cuts, cautiously willing to do their jobs. He had gone to lunch with a woman named Cass on his third day. She ran the inbound receiving desk and had been at the company for 7 years and had survived 3 rounds of cuts by the specific survival strategy of being so operationally indispensable that eliminating her would create an immediately visible problem. She was 44 and had the manner of someone who had decided, at some point, that honesty was more efficient than performance. "The numbers have been wrong for a while," Cass said, over a sandwich at the deli 2 blocks from the hub. "I know," Marcus said. "Not wrong because we're doing it wrong. Wrong coming in. I know that too." She looked at him. "You've been here 3 days. The pattern's not subtle." "Gerald saw it," she said. "Gerald saw it before anyone else. He was here 11 years. "I know." "She fired him for it," Cass said. "Diana fired him for it." Diana was shown an analysis that said Gerald's methodology was wrong, Marcus said. She acted on the analysis. Cass looked at him for a moment. "You think she was wrong to fire him?" "I think she was given wrong information and made a reasonable decision based on it," Marcus said. "That's different." Cass was quiet for a moment. "That's the most careful way I've ever heard anyone defend someone who fired 11 people in 8 months, she said. "I'm not defending her," Marcus said. "I'm being accurate." Cass looked at him again. She had, he thought, the same way of looking at a thing that Gracie had, the directness of someone who had decided that the most useful thing you could do with your attention was apply it honestly. "What are you going to do about it?" she said. "My job," he said. "For now." "And after for now?" He looked at his sandwich. "I'm going to need someone who knows the operations well to verify some patterns I've been seeing in the data. Someone with 11 years of context knowledge." Cass understood. "I didn't say anything," she said. "I didn't ask you to," he said. She went back to her sandwich. "Gerald's number is in the company directory," she said. Still, nobody deleted it. "Good to know," Marcus said. He wrote for 2 hours. At the top of the first page he wrote, "The wrong numbers are coming from inside the house." The Monday meeting was not what he expected. He had expected a conversation about his comment on Friday, about the upstream issues, about what he had meant, about whether he was going to be the next coordinator to last 5 weeks. He had been prepared for that conversation. He had spent the weekend being prepared for it, thinking through what he knew and what he could prove, and what the difference was between the two. Diana Calloway's office was on the 3rd floor, corner, with a view of the Columbus skyline that was better than the building deserved. It was a room that had been organized with intention and was holding that intention under pressure. The desk clear. The files in order, the single plant near the window that was alive and well-tended, the details of a person who had not let the difficult months make her careless about the things she could control. He noticed the plant specifically. He had learned to read maintenance as character. "You've been here 1 week," she said, "and you said the issues are upstream. Tell me what you mean." He told her. Not everything. He was careful about what he could prove versus what he had inferred. But enough. The discrepancy pattern in the inbound data. The consistency of the errors. The way they were structured. Always at the consolidation point. Always in a direction that benefited a specific billing category. He did not name Victor Price. He did not have enough to name Victor Price. He described the pattern and let the pattern sit there. Diana listened without interrupting. When he was finished, she was quiet for a full 20 seconds, which he had learned was her version of a long pause, the version that meant the information was being processed at depth. "You've been here 1 week," she said again. Not a challenge. A statement of fact about the situation. "Yes, the coordinator before you was here 5 weeks and didn't see this." "I think he was looking at a different part of the problem," Marcus said carefully. "Gerald Oakes saw it," Diana said. It was not a question. Marcus said nothing. "He brought me something last year," she said, "in November. He had a spreadsheet." She stopped. "I was shown a counter-analysis by my CFO that identified errors in Gerald's methodology. I found Gerald's calls unreliable. I let him go." She looked at the Columbus skyline. "I think about that now." The room was quiet for a moment. "What would you need," she said, "to prove the pattern?" 3 more weeks of inbound data and access to the billing reconciliation reports. The billing reconciliation reports are CFO-level access. I know. She looked at him. The full directness she brought to everything, the kind that didn't flinch. I can't give you that access without Victor knowing I gave it to you. I know that too. You're asking me to trust the judgment of someone who has been here 1 week over the judgment of a CFO who has been here 6 years. No, Marcus said. I'm asking you to think about Gerald Oakes and what his spreadsheet said. Another 20-second silence. Come back Thursday, she said, with the 3 weeks of inbound data. Bring me the pattern in a form I can show a forensic accountant. He spent the rest of Monday and all of Tuesday building the fuller version of what he had shown Diana in pieces, the complete pattern, documented in a format that could be verified by someone with accounting expertise. He did this at his coordinator station during the day, embedded in the ordinary workflow of inbound manifests and carrier communications, because the cover of ordinary work was important, and because he was genuinely good at doing 2 things at once when both of them required the same quality of attention. Cass stopped by the coordinator station on Tuesday afternoon with a coffee she hadn't been asked to bring and set it on the corner of his desk and said, without looking at him, the billing system access logs are archived for 18 months. If someone wanted to pull them, they would need CFO-level access, Marcus said. Or they would need someone with CFO-level access to pull them, Cass said. He looked at the coffee. Cass, I'm not saying anything, she said. I'm just observing that the archived logs exist and are accessible to certain people. She went back to the receiving desk. He thought about that on the drive home. He thought about Cass and about what she was offering and about the risks she was taking in offering it, and about the specific courage it took to offer it inside a company that had been firing people for 8 months for asking the right questions. He brought it to Diana on Wednesday. Not a request, a statement of what existed and what it would show if pulled. Diana listened and then was quiet for the long pause, and then said, I can pull the access logs. Victor will know, Marcus said. Victor will see I pulled them. He won't know why unless he knows what you've shown me. Can you pull them in a way that looks routine? She thought about it. There's a quarterly systems audit coming up. I can include the billing access logs in the audit scope without it looking unusual. When's the audit? 2 weeks. Do it, he said. She looked at him. You've been here 10 days. I know. You're telling me to run a covert audit of my CFO inside a systems review. I'm telling you that you have a reason to and a cover to, he said. What you do with that is your call. She looked at him for the long pause. Go back to your desk, she said. Going, he said. The following Thursday, Diana pulled the access logs inside the quarterly systems audit. She did not tell Marcus she had done it until Friday morning, when she appeared at the hub coordinator station at 7:45 with a USB drive and set it on his desk and said, The billing system access logs for the past 14 months. I need you to tell me what you see. He took the drive home that evening. Gracie was at Mrs. Adeyemi's next door and he had the kitchen table to himself and 3 hours before he needed to pick her up. He plugged in the drive and opened the logs and started reading. He called Diana at 9:15. It's worse than the pattern suggested, he said. How much worse? The access entries are consistent across 14 months, not 8. He started this before the period we were tracking. A silence on the line. How much total? I can't give you a final number without the reconciliation records, but if the inflation rate held from the beginning, 4 million, maybe more. Another silence. Longer, Diana. I'm here, she said. Steady, the way she was steady at everything. I'm going to need a forensic accountant. Someone outside the company. Yes, he said. I know someone. I went to graduate school with her. She's good and she's discreet. Get her, he said. He picked up Gracie at 10. She was asleep on Mrs. Adeyemi's couch, the same way she always was when he picked her up late. And he carried her to the truck and drove home and put her to bed and sat at the kitchen table for another hour looking at the access logs. 4 million, maybe more. He thought about Gerald Oakes and his spreadsheet in November and the counter-analysis that had identified errors in Gerald's methodology. He thought about what it took to prepare a counter-analysis for a thing that was real, to look at numbers that were true and find language to make them look unreliable. To do that to a colleague of 11 years. To do it to a person who had done his job correctly. He thought about that for a long time. Then he put the legal pad away and went to bed. He went back to the hub. The weeks that followed were the strangest professional period of his life, and he had spent 8 months watching Julia die, so he had calibrated what strange meant. He did his coordinator job correctly and completely, and without any visible change in behavior. Because the most important thing about finding a serious problem inside a system you've just joined is not showing that you've found it. He processed the inbound manifests. He managed the carrier relationships. He flagged the discrepancies in the normal channel and noted their upstream sources in his personal log, which he kept on a flash drive he carried in his wallet next to the yellow post. It noted that Julia had written on the refrigerator the morning of her last hospital stay, "Don't forget Gracie's recital Thursday. I'll be home for it." She had not been home for it. He had gone to the recital alone and sat in the second row and watched his daughter play the recorder with 17 other second graders, and he had cried with the particular privacy of a man who has practiced crying, quietly, and he had taken 20 pictures, and he had thought about how Julia would have laughed at the specific cacophony of 20 recorders, playing at slightly different tempos. He still thought about that sometimes. He thought about it on Thursdays, specifically, because Thursday was still the day that had a weight to it. He brought Diana the pattern in the third week. 47 pages, printed, with a 2-page executive summary at the front. The pattern was not subtle, once you had the right 3 columns side by side. The inbound data, the billing reconciliation, and the carrier payment records. The numbers aligned in a way that was too consistent to be coincidence and too directional to be error. Every quarter, in the 30 to 60 days following a board reporting period, a set of freight consolidation charges were inflated in the billing system before the quarterly reconciliation. The inflation was small enough, per entry, to fall below the audit threshold. Over 8 months, the cumulative amount was $2.3 million. Diana read the 2-page summary at her desk, while Marcus sat in the chair across from her. She read it twice. "My CFO," she said. It was not a question. "The access trail points to the billing system administrator," Marcus said carefully. "Who reports to your CFO?" Diana looked at the summary. "Victor doesn't need $2.3 million. His compensation package, it's not about the money," Marcus said. "Not primarily." He paused. "The board vote on the expansion proposal is in 6 weeks. Your CFO has been building a case for the last 8 months that your management decisions are financially erratic. Every coordinator who is fired for calling discrepancies that were actually correct, that's a data point in his case. Every quarterly result that underperformed because of inflated charges, that's a data point. He's building a record." Diana was very still. "He's positioning for the vote," she said. "Yes, to replace me. I think so." She looked out the window at the Columbus skyline. She was quiet for longer than 20 seconds. Much longer. "Gerald Oakes," she said finally. "Yes, he had this. In November. And I let Victor show me why Gerald was wrong. Yes." She put the summary down on the desk with a care that was the opposite of anger. The care of someone putting something fragile down. Something that has just told them something irreversible. She looked at Marcus. "Why are you still here?" she said. "You've been here 3 weeks. You found this in the first week. You could have taken this somewhere else. To the board directly, to the auditors, to a lawyer. Why bring it to me?" He thought about Julia's post-it note. About the recital he had gone to alone. About Gracie, who packed her own lunch with a container that had a rubber duck on the lid, because Marcus had told her she could pick the container herself, and she had picked the rubber duck one, and he had said yes. "Because it's your company," he said. "Someone took something from you. That's yours to fix." She looked at him for a long moment with an expression that was not soft. Renata Cole was not a soft person, and neither was Diana Calloway, but that had something in it that was past evaluation. She stood at the window for a long time without saying anything. Marcus sat in the chair across from the desk and did not fill the silence, because he had learned in 3 weeks that Diana's silences were not invitations. "There are things I don't understand about this yet," she said finally. "Specifically, why Victor wants the company. He has an excellent compensation package. The CFO role at a company this size is a good life. He has been here 6 years. He built the finance function from $32 million in annual revenue to $380. Why, I think, Marcus said carefully, that it stopped being about the money when the Hartfield acquisition fell through last year. She turned from the window. The Hartfield deal. I looked at the public filings, Marcus said. The acquisition would have made Calloway the third largest regional freight company in the Midwest. It fell through in the due diligence phase. The reporting said the deal broke down over valuation. But the timing, Victor's compensation contract has an acquisition clause, Diana said slowly. If the company achieves a certain scale, through acquisition or organic growth, his equity stake vests at a rate that would be, she stopped. A lot of money, Marcus said. Yes, a great deal of money. The Hartfield deal was the path to that, Marcus said. When it fell through, he needed a different path. Taking the CEO position gives him control of the acquisition strategy. With the board supporting him, which they would, if they believed your management was failing, he could pursue a different acquisition target on his timeline. Diana looked at the city. He's not just stealing from the company, she said. He's positioning to own it. To run it, Marcus said. To build it into the thing the acquisition clause rewards him for building. The fraud is capitalization. The real play is the board vote. Another long silence. Very long. The Calloway direct proposal, she said. Which you gave me in the third week. Yes, you were already thinking about the counter. I was thinking about what this company should actually be doing, Marcus said. The counter was a secondary benefit. She looked at him with the directness that was her only mode. I have been running this company for 11 years, she said, and a logistics coordinator who has been here 6 weeks has just explained to me what my CFO's exit strategy is. You had all the same information, Marcus said. You were just being told a different story about it. She was quiet again. Then, in a different register, not the CEO register, not the evaluation register, you have a daughter. Yes, and you've been doing this every evening after she's asleep. Yes, she looked at the window. My mother would have had an opinion about that. What would she have said? She would have said, that man shows up. A pause. She valued that above most things. She said the quality of a person was determined not by what they did when it was easy, but by what they did when it cost something. Marcus didn't say anything. She also would have said I should buy the man a decent cup of coffee instead of the machine on the second floor, Diana said. She had strong opinions about the machine on the second floor. It was not quite a joke, but it was in the direction of one. And in Renata Cole's vocabulary, in Diana Calloway's vocabulary, and the vocabulary of precise and defended women who had been through something that had taken from them and were deciding how much to trust the thing in front of them, a not-quite joke was substantial. The machine is bad, Marcus confirmed. Yes, Diana said. It is. I need 2 weeks, she said. I need you to keep doing exactly what you're doing. Can you do that? Yes, he said. I'm going to be managing this carefully. There will be things that look wrong from the outside. Things that look like my decisions. They won't be yours. No, he looked at her. I know that, he said. She nodded once, picked up the 47 pages. He spent the rest of that week building the full 47 pages. Not because Diana had asked for 47 pages, but he had learned, in 19 years of logistics, that a document's persuasive power was not in its conclusions, but in its completeness. A document that showed every step was not dismissible by finding a single methodological error. Gerald Oakes's spreadsheet had probably been correct. What had made it dismissible was that it was a single analytical layer that could be countered. 47 pages with supporting documentation at every step was a different category of document. He built it at the coordinator station during the day and at the kitchen table in the evenings. He was careful about the kitchen table work. He waited until Gracie was asleep. She came down for water on Tuesdays and sometimes Thursdays, and each time she looked at the legal pad and the printouts and said, "Still working?" And he said, "Almost done," and she got her water and went back upstairs, satisfied, as she always was, by a direct answer. He thought about Julia during those evenings. The useful kind of thinking about Julia. The kind that had started about a year in and felt more like a conversation than a grief. What would she say? She would say, Don't be impressive, be thorough. She would say it the same way she said things she had thought through. Specific, durable, within reach. He was thorough. When he brought the 47 pages to Diana and watched her read the summary twice, he thought about the quality of her stillness during the reading. He had been around Diana Calloway for 3 weeks and had developed a working vocabulary for her silences. The working silence, the assessment silence, and the other kind, the one she was in now. The silence of someone who has just been shown something irreversible and is deciding what to do with having seen it. She paged through the supporting documentation, sampling the depth of it. This took you 3 weeks, she said, and evenings. How many evenings? Most of them. A pause. You have a daughter. She goes to bed at 8:30. She looked at him over the pages. You could have given me 12 pages in the pattern. Why did you build it this completely? I didn't want it to be dismissible, he said. Gerald Oakes was dismissed. I didn't want to be dismissed the same way. She looked at the pages for a moment. You know about Gerald's spreadsheet. I know he brought you something in November. I know Victor's counter-analysis said his methodology was flawed. I know he was let go. Yes, she said, very still. How do you know? Cass? She nodded slowly. Cass has been here 7 years. She's loyal to what this company is supposed to be. Diana looked at the Columbus skyline. I have failed a number of people who deserve better, she said, not as confession, as fact. I gave them the best judgment I had based on the information I had. The information was wrong. Yes, that doesn't undo the harm. No, he said. But it changes what the harm was. Your judgment worked correctly on the wrong inputs. That's a different problem. A different kind of failure. She was quiet for a long moment. Yes, she said. It is. Go back to work, she said. He went. Victor Price was 54, broadly liked, and excellent at managing the image of a man managing a difficult situation with patience and grace. He appeared in the hub twice in the weeks after Marcus's meeting with Diana, both times with the air of a senior executive doing a routine walkthrough. Nothing pointed, nothing that looked like surveillance. He spoke to the hub staff with the warm, inclusive attention of someone who wanted to be seen paying attention. He asked Marcus on the second visit how he was settling in, whether the coordinator role was a good fit for his background, whether he was finding the right support at the team level. Marcus said yes to all of it. He watched Victor walk through the freight bay and noted the specific things Victor looked at and the specific things he didn't. Victor looked at the carrier schedule board. He looked at the manifest logs. He did not look at the billing reconciliation terminal, which was in the back left corner of the coordinator station and which would have been a natural thing to check if you were a CFO doing a genuine walkthrough. He didn't look at it because he already knew what was in it. Marcus noted this in his log and drove home and listened to the Clementine chapter. In the 4th week, Diana made a decision that looked from the outside like another error. She announced a restructuring of the Columbus Hub's management structure, eliminating the senior hub manager role, centralizing 2 functions that had been separate, reporting the changes to the board as an operational efficiency measure. It looked, in the context of the preceding 8 months, like more of the same. The hub manager, a competent, careful woman named Rosario, who had been in the role for 3 years, came to Marcus's coordinator station the morning of the announcement with the expression of someone who had been hit by something they hadn't seen coming. Did you know about this? Rosario said. No, Marcus said. Which was true. This is wrong, Rosario said. I run this hub well. The numbers I know, Marcus said. Then why? He could not tell her. He did not know enough of the operational shape of what Diana was doing to explain it, and he would not have been authorized to explain it even if he had. Give it time, he said, which was the best he could offer. Rosario looked at him with the specific look that people gave you when what you said was inadequate to the situation, and everyone present knew it. She went back to her office. She was gone 2 weeks later. That was the hardest week. There was a morning, Thursday morning, when Marcus sat in the coordinator station and looked at the logistics board and thought about the recital, about sitting in the second row alone, about the ways that being the only person who understood the full picture of a situation was sometimes indistinguishable from being the person who let something bad happen. The note was worn at the folds, from the times he had taken it out and put it back. The yellow was faded in the middle where it had been folded, bright at the edges. And Julia's handwriting was in the particular blue ink she had always used, a fine point pen she bought in 12 packs and kept in a cup on the kitchen counter. She had strong opinions about pens. She had strong opinions about a great many things, which she expressed with the same directness she brought to the legal pads and the recital reminder and the 23 other things she had written down in the last month of her life, because she was a person who organized her attention by writing down what needed attending to. Gracie had that. The directness. The habit of naming the thing that needed naming and then moving on, because the naming was enough and the elaboration was waste. He had been thinking all that Thursday about what it cost to be the person who knew the full picture of a situation. It was a specific cost he had not considered when he had decided to stay, when he had decided, in the third week, that this was the call and he was going to make it. He had considered the professional risk. He had considered the possibility of being wrong, of having misread the pattern, of arriving at a conclusion the forensic accountant would find unsupported. He had not fully considered the cost of watching things go wrong around him while he held the knowledge that they were going wrong and could not stop them. Rosario was the 11th coordinator-level person to leave in 8 months. She had run the hub well. She had, in the 2 weeks before she was let go, helped Marcus understand the operations in a way that the job description hadn't covered. The informal networks, the carrier preferences, the specific ways the Columbus hub differed from the company's other operations. She had shared that knowledge generously, the way people shared knowledge when they thought they were going to be working alongside someone for a while. She had not known, and he had not told her, that the restructuring was part of a set of moves that Diana was making for reasons that were not the reasons being stated. He had not been able to protect her. He had been able to say, give it time. He had not been able to say why time would matter, or what was coming, or that her role would be restored under a different name once the board meeting had happened and there was a different narrative in place. He thought about the recital, about sitting in the second row alone, about the 20 pictures and the private crying and the particular cacophony of 20 recorders. There were situations where the right thing and the cost of the right thing arrived at the same moment, and you had to hold both at once. Julia had taught him that, without meaning to teach it, she had simply been the kind of person who held both at once, who organized the cost on the legal pad alongside the necessity, who wrote, "Don't forget Gracie's recital Thursday," because the recital mattered, and Thursday was coming, and the two facts needed to be held simultaneously. He put the note back. He went to work. He pulled out his wallet. He looked at Julia's post-it note. "Don't forget Gracie's recital Thursday." He put it back. He went to work. Diana called him to the third floor on a Friday afternoon with no warning and no explanation, and when he arrived in the office, she was standing at the window with the phone in her hand and an expression that was the closest to undone he had ever seen on her, which was still not very undone. She was a person who processed damage with the same precision she brought to everything else. And the precision was still there, but he could see the effort it was costing. "Victor moved the board vote up," she said. 3 weeks. He's calling it an emergency governance review. He's told the board that the Columbus hub restructuring is evidence of continued erratic decision-making. He circulated a timeline of management decisions over the past 8 months, terminations, restructuring moves, carrier contract changes, framed as evidence of executive dysfunction. She paused. "It's a good document, actually, taken out of context. It's a very good document. What's the timeline on the forensic accountant? She needs 2 more weeks. The access trail goes through 3 system layers. That's a week past the board vote. Yes, what do we do?" She looked at the Columbus skyline. There are 4 board members who know this company well enough to read what that document is actually saying if they have the right counter context. "I have 1 week to have 4 conversations." She turned from the window and looked at him. "I need to brief you on what the conversations will cover. Because you found the pattern, and you'll need to be available if any of them want to talk to the person who found it." He thought about that for a moment. He thought about what it meant to be visible in this, about what it meant for someone who had been at the company for a month to be the person standing in front of a board member saying your CFO has been stealing from you and framing your CEO for it. He thought about Gerald Oakes, who had done this correctly and had not been protected. "I'll be available," he said. She looked at him for another of the long pauses. "You understand what this costs if the vote goes wrong," she said. "If the board replaces me, Victor controls the narrative. Everyone who was visible and opposing him, you'll be the first person they remove." "I know. You've been here a month. I know." She looked at him. "Why?" she said. The same question she had asked before. He didn't answer it differently. "Because it's the right call," he said. "And someone should make it." She nodded once. The long pause. The window. "Gracie," she said. "That's your daughter's name." It surprised him. He had mentioned Gracie once in the first interview, and he had not mentioned her since. "Yes. How old?" 8. She was quiet for a moment. "My father left when I was 8, she said. "My mother ran a dry cleaning business in Dayton. She worked 6 days a week for 12 years to build something. When I took my memba, she used to call me every Sunday and ask about the financials she didn't understand. She wanted to understand." A pause. "She died when I was 31. She never saw what I built with this company. She looked at the skyline. I built it for her, in part," she said. "That's not entirely rational." "No," Marcus said. "But it's true." She looked at him. Something in her posture shifted a degree. Not loose, Diana Calloway did not do loose, but slightly less armored than it usually was. Like someone who had decided for a moment to set down a weight they had been carrying for a long time alone. "The first board conversation is Monday morning," she said. "I need the 47 pages in a format I can leave with a board member without it looking like an accusation document. Clean, factual, no conclusion stated." "I can do that," he said. "Tonight?" "Tonight," he said. Before he left the office that Friday evening, he went back to the hub and sat at the coordinator station for 30 minutes, doing nothing that looked like anything, except reviewing the carrier schedule for the following week. What he was actually doing was thinking through what he was about to write. He had been in difficult situations before. Not this kind of difficult. This was corporate. This was financial. This was a game that had rules he had mostly been learning on the job. But the quality of the difficulty was familiar. The quality of being the person who had seen the thing clearly and had to decide what to do with having seen it. He had been in that position the week Julia's oncologist told them the second-line treatment had not worked. And he had been in that position the week after Julia died, when he had to decide whether to move Gracie to his mother-in-law's in Dayton or stay in Columbus and find new arrangements. And he had been in it every month for 26 months as he made the 100 small decisions that were. Actually, one large ongoing decision about how to raise his daughter without her mother. What he had learned from all of it was that the difficulty of a situation was not the same as its complexity. Difficult things could be simple. The right call could be completely clear and still cost something significant. The cost was not a reason not to make the call. He thought about Gerald Oakes specifically as he reviewed the carrier schedule. Gerald had made the right call. Gerald had put the information in front of the right person and had been countered and had been let go. The counter-analysis had been wrong, constructed specifically to be wrong, designed to find the exact kind of methodological language that would make a correct finding look like an error. Gerald had done the right thing and had not been protected. Marcus was going to do the same right thing. He was going to do it with better documentation, and in a moment when Diana had less reason to trust Victor's counterframing, because she had spent 8 months watching people she'd trusted give her information that turned out to be structured around what someone else needed her to believe. She was, he thought, better prepared to question a counter-analysis now than she had been in November. That was the difference. Not heroism, not skill beyond Gerald's. Just timing and context and the specific luck of arriving late enough that the pattern was fully visible. He thought about that on the drive to pick up Gracie. He thought, I am not going to be Gerald Oakes. Not because Gerald had done anything wrong. Because Marcus was going to build the documentation differently. Not just the pattern, but the access trail. Not just the what, but the who. Not just the numbers, but a record that a forensic accountant could trace to a specific workstation in a specific suite on the 3rd floor of the Calloway Freight Solutions Tower. He picked up Gracie. She had had a good day. She told him about it in the car with the comprehensive details she brought to things that had interested her which on this occasion was a disagreement at recess about the rules of a game that Marcus had only partial context for, but that he listened to with full attention anyway. Because Gracie's recess disagreements had the same narrative complexity as everything else she was interested in and deserved the same quality of listener. At a red light, she said, "Dad, are you listening?" The one with the green coat said the rule didn't apply to the Tuesday version, he said. She looked at him in the rear view. "That's exactly right," she said, with appropriate surprise. "I'm always listening," he said. She accepted this and went back to the story. The week after the board meeting, Marcus got to the hub at 7 and found Cass already there, which was not unusual. Cass was always already there, and she was at the receiving desk with a coffee and a print of the Q2 carrier metrics and the expression of someone who had been waiting for an occasion to say something. "You know what Gerald said when I called him," Cass said, without preamble. "What?" He said. "I knew someone would call eventually. I just didn't know who." She paused. He said, "Tell them I still have the spreadsheet." Marcus looked at the carrier metric she was holding. "Does he?" "He has it on a USB drive. He's had it for 8 months. He said he kept it because he knew the numbers were right. And when you know the numbers are right, you keep the evidence." Marcus thought about the flash drive in his wallet, next to the post-it note. "Tell him to send it," Marcus said. "Tell him it's going in the record alongside the 47 pages." Cass nodded. She looked satisfied in the way she looked satisfied about things she had been waiting to happen for a long time. "He'll want to know about the boardroom," she said. "He'll want to know what happened when you presented it. I'll call him this afternoon." "Good." She held out the carrier metrics. "The Northeast Corridor numbers are up another 3%. He took the metrics. "I know," he said. "I was going to tell you this morning." "I know you were going to tell me," she said. "I already knew." She went to the receiving desk. He stood at the coordinator station with the carrier metrics and the freight board and the ordinary early morning apparatus of the hub doing what it was supposed to do, and he thought about Gerald Oakes with his USB drive and his 8 months of waiting and his certainty that the numbers were right. He thought, that's what it looks like. That's what it looks like to have found the thing correctly and to have been wrong about the timing and to have kept the evidence anyway, because when the numbers are right, you keep the evidence. He had kept his too. The 47 pages, the flash drive, the access logs. He had built them to be the kind of documentation that held up, and they had held up. And now they were in a record that said, this is what happened, and this is what the company's institutional memory should carry forward. Gerald kept the spreadsheet. Marcus built the 47 pages. Neither of them had done a dramatic thing. They had done the precise thing, at the right level of completeness, with the appropriate patience. The patience was the hardest part, and it was the part nobody talked about. The sitting with the knowledge while the work was done correctly, the choosing to do the documented version rather than the fast version, the understanding that thoroughness was its own kind of courage. Cass had said, ridiculous, but good. He thought, yes, exactly that. He went to work. He went home. He made Gracie dinner. He helped with math homework. He put her to bed. He sat at the kitchen table with the legal pad and the flash drive, and he wrote until 2 a.m, and when it was done, it was 19 pages, clean and factual with no stated conclusions, and the facts said everything the conclusions would have said anyway. He sent it at 2:15. She sent back at 2:40, this is exactly right. He went to bed. It was Gracie who changed the temperature of the room. She came to the office on a Saturday in the 4th week because Mrs. Adiemi had a family thing in Akron and there was nowhere else, and Marcus had a full day of document preparation to do, and Gracie was 8 and had strong opinions about spending the day in an office building, but had been persuaded by the logic that if she came there would be a working printer, which she needed for a school project that involved maps. She installed herself in the corner of the 3rd floor conference room with her maps project and a bag of pretzels and the rubber duck lunchbox, and Marcus worked at the table across from her. And for 2 hours the room had the particular quiet of 2 people working in parallel who were used to each other's working sounds. Diana came to the conference room at 11. She had come to pick up the documents Marcus had finished, and she stopped in the doorway at the sight of the 8-year-old with the map printouts and the pretzels and the rubber duck lunchbox, and her expression was the one she got when something didn't match the expected parameters of a room. She needed the printer, Marcus said. I can see. Diana said. Gracie looked up from the maps. She assessed Diana with the particular directness she brought to new adults. Not hostility, pure evaluation. Are you the person my dad is helping? She said. Diana looked at Marcus. Yes, she said. He works late, Gracie said. He was at the kitchen table until really late last week. He does that when something is important. I know, Diana said. He was helping me. Gracie considered this for a moment. Is it because someone did something wrong? Yes to you? A pause. Something moved in Diana's face, the particular movement of someone who has been asked the true question by the person least likely to ask it and most likely to need to hear it. Yes, she said. To me. Gracie nodded, with the gravity she brought to things that mattered. That's why he works late, she said. He says the only reason to stay up late on something is if it's the right thing and it needs doing. She went back to her maps. Diana looked at the top of Gracie's head for a moment, then at Marcus. He looked at the document he was working on. She's right, Diana said. I know, he said. She usually is. Diana set the documents on the conference room table. She sat down, not in the executive posture she brought to everything, but in the way of someone who has decided for a moment to be in a room rather than managing it. She looked at the maps project. What's the project? She said. Gracie explained. It was a geography project about trade routes. Ancient ones. The Silk Road, specifically. And how goods moved from one place to another before there were trucks or freight companies or logistics coordinators. Diana listened. She asked 3 questions, each of which suggested she actually knew something about trade route history, which appeared to surprise and then deeply interest Gracie, because the school project had not covered some of what Diana mentioned, and Gracie had strong feelings about the completeness of her research. Why do you know this? Gracie said. My MBA thesis was on the history of logistics, Diana said. Your thesis was on trucks, on the movement of goods, before there were trucks. Gracie thought about this with the expression she got when she was revising her model of something. The Silk Road was basically logistics, she said. Yes, Diana said. Exactly, but without computers. And without carrier contracts, Diana said. Although they had agreements. Different words. Gracie looked at Marcus. Can I interview her for my project? That's up to Miss Calloway, Marcus said. Diana looked at Gracie. Yes, she said. They talked for 45 minutes. Gracie asked questions from the project worksheet, and Diana answered them, and then Gracie asked questions that were not on the project worksheet, but that she had been wondering about, and Diana answered those too. And at the end of it, Gracie said, You should come to my class. My teacher would like you. Maybe, Diana said. My dad could bring you, Gracie said. He knows where the school is. Marcus looked at the document he was working on with great attention. Diana made a sound that was not quite a laugh, but was in the neighborhood of one. The kind of sound a person makes when something surprises them into warmth they hadn't planned on showing. Maybe, she said again. She left with the documents. He worked for another 2 hours after Diana left. Gracie finished the maps project and moved on to the reading homework, and then declared herself finished and came to sit at the conference table across from Marcus with the rubber duck lunchbox and a book she had brought as backup entertainment. She knows a lot, Gracie said after a while. Ms. Calloway, yes, about trade routes. She knew things that weren't in any of my sources. She studied it, Marcus said, for a long time. Why? Because it matters. The movement of goods. How things get from one place to another. It's how the world works, basically. Gracie thought about this. Is that why you do what you do? Partly, he said. I like the problem of it. Getting the thing where it needs to be. Finding the right route. Mom would have been good at that, Gracie said. She said it without weight, the way she said things about Julia now, not with the grief of the first year, but with the particular matter-of-factness of a child who has integrated a loss into her understanding of the world and goes on living accordingly. Julia would have been good at that. True, noted, moving on. Yes, Marcus said. She would have. Is Miss Calloway going to be okay? Gracie said. He looked at his daughter over the laptop screen. What makes you ask? She seemed like something was wrong. Not wrong like when something is almost right, but the last piece hasn't happened yet. He thought about that. About the last piece. About the board meeting that was 11 days away, and the forensic accountant who needed 9 more days, and the 4 board conversations that Diana was about to have. About the specific precision of almost right. Yes, he said, I think she's going to be okay. Because you're helping. Because the truth is documentable, he said. That's the important thing. When the truth can be documented, it tends to win eventually. Gracie considered this. Eventually is a long time. Sometimes, he said. This time I think it's going to be faster. She accepted this and went back to her book. He went back to the operations plan. He thought about the Northeast Corridor carrier capacity. He thought about what Diana had said about her mother and the dry cleaning business in Dayton, about the quality of a person being determined by what they did when it cost something. He thought, I am going to make sure this is documentable enough to hold. He worked until 6. She did not look back at the conference room doorway, but Marcus heard her, at the elevator, make the sound again. Gracie went back to her maps. She's sad, Gracie said, after a moment, without looking up. Yes, Marcus said. She's been going through a hard time. But she knows a lot about the Silk Road. Yes, that's good, Gracie said. Knowing things helps. He looked at her over the legal pad. Yes, he said. It does. In the days between Gracie's Silk Road conversation with Diana and the first board meeting, the Calloway Freight Solutions building had a specific quality of held breath, not visible to anyone who wasn't paying attention. To Marcus, who had been paying attention to systems under pressure for 19 years, it was as legible as the hollow sound in a subfloor. Victor continued to be excellent. He continued to appear in the hub, continued his warm walk-through manner, continued to speak to Diana in meetings with the deferential precision of a CFO who was concerned about his CEO and was managing that concern professionally. He was, Marcus thought, very good. He had been very good for 8 months, and the goodness of it had been what made it work. The performance of a man acting in the company's interest had been so well constructed that it had been indistinguishable from the thing it was imitating. Cass stopped by Marcus's desk on Wednesday of that week with a second coffee she hadn't been asked to bring. Victor was on the second floor for 40 minutes yesterday afternoon, she said. I know, Marcus said. He was at the billing terminal for about 12 of those minutes. Marcus looked up from the manifest log. I wasn't watching him, Cass said. I happened to be in the vicinity. With my eyes open. Did he access anything? I don't know what he accessed. I know he was there for 12 minutes and he didn't ask anyone to help him with anything, which is not what a CFO normally does when he's in the hub. Marcus thought about this. He might be cleaning the access trail, he said. I thought about that, Cass said. I thought, if he's cleaning it, he knows something's wrong. And if he knows something's wrong, he'll accelerate, Marcus said. Yes, Cass said. He called Diana at noon. He told her about the 12 minutes at the billing terminal. She was quiet for the pause. Then, the forensic accountant needs to lock the access trail. Whatever he can clean, she needs to have already archived. Can she do that remotely? If I give her the system credentials, which I can do today. Today, Marcus said. Today, she said. That evening, Marcus helped Gracie with a reading comprehension worksheet about a story involving a detective who solved a mystery by noticing small things. Gracie's assigned task was to list 3 things the detective noticed that other people didn't. Why did the other people miss them? Gracie said. Because they weren't looking for them, Marcus said. But the detective was. The detective was looking for patterns, Marcus said. Things that didn't fit. Once you know what a pattern is supposed to look like, you can see when something's off. Gracie wrote something on the worksheet. Is that what you do at work? Sometimes right now? He looked at the worksheet. Right now, he said. She finished the worksheet. She got 3 for 3 on the comprehension questions. She accepted this as her due and went to brush her teeth. Marcus sat at the kitchen table after she was asleep and thought about the board meeting. About Victor at the billing terminal for 12 minutes. About Cass and her eyes open, and her coffee she hadn't been asked to bring. About Francis Alderman and Gregory Holt, and the 4 conversations Diana was about to have. About Gerald Oakes, who had done this right and had not been protected. He opened the legal pad. He wrote for 45 minutes. At the top of a new page, he wrote, "What protecting someone actually looks like." Below it, he wrote a list. It was a short list. It had 3 items on it, and each item was specific and actionable and within reach. And when he was done, he closed the legal pad and went to bed. He called Gerald Oakes on Friday. Not to tell him anything, not yet, not until the board meeting had happened, and there was something definite to say. He called to confirm a number still worked, to leave a message that said, "I'm Marcus Webb. I'm the coordinator at Columbus Hub. I have something I'd like to discuss with you when the time is right. Nothing urgent, just when the time is right." Gerald called back in an hour. He sounded, Marcus thought, like a man who had been waiting for the particular shape of this call, not this call, specifically, but the category of call that it represented. The call that said, "What you found was real, and someone else found it too." "I'm still here," Gerald said. "I know," Marcus said. "I'll be in touch." "Yes," Gerald said. "I think you will." The days before the first board conversation were the most procedurally demanding of Marcus's career, which was a career that had included a 12-day period during a polar vortex, when 3 of his carrier routes went down simultaneously, and he had rerouted $40 million of freight through 2 backup networks while sleeping 4 hours a night. That had been operationally complex. This was different. This was the complexity of managing information carefully in a system where the wrong person seeing the wrong document at the wrong time could collapse 8 weeks of work in an afternoon. He got very good at looking like a logistics coordinator. He was a logistics coordinator. That was the grounding of it, the thing that made the cover real rather than performed. He processed the inbound manifests, he managed the carrier relationships, he logged the discrepancies in the normal channel. He was, by any observable measure, a competent mid-level coordinator who had settled into the role without drama. Victor, on his 3rd walkthrough of the hub, stopped at the coordinator station and said, "You're doing well here, Marcus. The hub metrics are up from last quarter." "Thank you," Marcus said. "Diana speaks highly of you." "She's a good manager to work for," Marcus said, which was the kind of thing a coordinator would say, and which was also, as it happened, true. Victor nodded, with the warmth of a man filing something. "Good," he said. "Good to hear." He moved on. Cass appeared at Marcus's desk 2 minutes later with the coffee. She set it down without comment. She looked at the point where Victor had disappeared around the freight bay corner. "He's checking on you," she said. "I know," Marcus said. "Does Diana know?" "She knows he does walkthroughs. She knows he's specifically tracking you." "Yes," Marcus said. "She knows that too." Cass looked at the corner where Victor had been. "He's very smooth," she said. "Yes, that's a specific skill. Being smooth when you're doing something that isn't smooth." "Yes," Marcus said. "It is." Cass picked up her own coffee. "Gerald was never smooth," she said. "Gerald was precise." "Which is different. Precision is harder to dismiss than smoothness," Marcus said. "Eventually," Cass said, "when there's enough of it." She went back to the receiving desk. He thought about that on the drive home. About precision and smoothness, and the specific difference between a person who was good at appearing trustworthy and a person who was trustworthy in a way that could be documented. Victor had spent 8 months being smooth. Gerald had spent 11 years being precise. Marcus had spent 6 weeks building 47 pages of precision. And he thought there was a point, there was always a point, where the documented version of a thing outlasted the performed version. He thought they were at that point. He picked up Gracie. She had had a spelling test. She had gotten 19 out of 20. The one she had gotten wrong was a word she felt had been spelled incorrectly in the dictionary, and she explained her position on this at some length and with some conviction, and Marcus listened to the whole thing and said, "That's a reasonable argument. Technically, you're wrong, but the reasoning is sound." Gracie accepted this as a fair outcome and moved on to what was for dinner. The board conversations happened over the following week. Marcus was in the room for 2 of them, at Diana's request, presenting the 19 clean pages to board members who were lawyers or experienced executives, and who read the pages with the focused attention of people who understood exactly what they were looking at. He answered questions. He did not overstate what the data showed. He said what he knew and what he had inferred, and the distinction between the two, every time, without being asked. One of the board members, a woman in her 60s named Frances Alderman, looked at the discrepancy pattern for a long time and then said, "Gerald Oakes brought something like this forward." "Yes," Diana said. "And we heard Victor's counter-analysis and found Gerald's methodology flawed." "Yes," Frances looked at Marcus. "You weren't here then." "No. Where did you start pulling on this?" "The inbound data looked wrong in the first week," he said. "The errors were too consistent to be random." Frances looked at the pages again. 8 months, she said. Not to anyone specifically. To the room. "Yes," Diana said. Another silence. "What's the number?" Frances said. 2.3 million, Marcus said. "So far." Frances looked at Diana. "Who else knows about this?" "The forensic accountant." "Marcus. Now you and the 3 others I've briefed." "Not Victor." "Not Victor." Frances nodded, with the decisive nod of someone arriving at a position. "The vote is in 2 weeks." Victor moved it up. "Do we have what we need in 2 weeks?" "The forensic accountant will have the access trail confirmation in 10 days, Diana said. "That's tight." "Yes," Frances looked at Marcus. "You're the person who found this in a month." "Yes, Gerald Oakes didn't find it in 11 years. Gerald found it," Marcus said. "He brought it to Miss Calloway in November. He was countered with Victor's analysis and let go." He paused. "Gerald found it. He just wasn't protected when he did." Frances was quiet for a moment. "Well," she said, "we're going to fix that." In the weeks between the board briefings and the board vote, Marcus and Diana worked. Not only on the Victor problem had a timeline and a forensic accountant and a set of board members who were now on the right side of the information. They worked on something else, the Calloway Direct proposal that Marcus had sketched out in his 3rd week as a thought experiment, and that Diana had found in a shared folder one morning and had asked him, with no preamble, to develop fully. Calloway Direct was a last-mile delivery subsidiary, a standalone operational unit that would handle the final delivery leg for commercial clients in the Columbus metro area, using the company's existing carrier relationships and Marcus's operational background in hub logistics. It was a good idea. It was a good idea in the way that good ideas felt different from adequate ones. It fit the company's existing strengths without requiring new capital the company didn't have. It addressed a service gap that Marcus had identified in the hub's carrier relationships, and it gave the board something to evaluate Diana against that was forward motion rather than defensive management. Diana developed the financial model. Marcus developed the operations plan. They met on Saturday mornings in the 3rd-floor conference room and worked through the proposal section by section, and sometimes Gracie was there. And once she asked to see the operations plan, and Marcus showed her, and she pointed at the last-mile route map and said, "This is like the Silk Road." "It's exactly like the Silk Road," Diana said. Gracie looked pleased. The proposal was 40 pages when it was finished. Diana submitted it to the board package for the vote meeting alongside the forensic accountant's preliminary findings, which arrived 9 days after Frances Alderman's conversation, 1 day ahead of the board meeting. The preliminary findings confirmed the access trail. They confirmed, specifically, that the billing system entries for the fraudulent charges had originated from a workstation registered to Victor Price's CFO suite, not to his administrator, to Victor himself. Diana read the findings on a Tuesday morning. She called Marcus at 8:15. "We have it," she said. He was at the kitchen table with a cup of coffee and Gracie's backpack half-packed in front of him. "Yes," he said. "The board meeting is Thursday." "Yes, I want you there." He thought about Thursday, about the weight it had always had, about Julia's note, about the recital in the 2nd row. "I'll be there," he said. The board meeting was on a Thursday morning in a conference room on the 14th floor of the Calloway Freight Solutions Tower. Victor Price arrived at the same time as 3 of the board members, and had, Marcus thought, the particular composure of someone who believed they were about to win. He had that quality of settled certainty, the certainty of a man who had spent 8 months building a case and saw no reason the case would not do what it was designed to do. He shook hands with Frances Alderman. He spoke with the 2 other board members who arrived alongside him. He was warm, inclusive, and excellent in the way he had always been. He did not see Marcus until he was in the conference room. He looked at Marcus and the coordinator role he had been in for 6 weeks, sitting at the board table at Diana's right hand with a folder of materials in front of him, and something shifted in his composure for a fraction of a second. Not much. Not enough for anyone who wasn't paying close attention. But Marcus was paying close attention. "I didn't know we'd have a coordinator present," Victor said. Pleasantly, "Marcus is here as a witness," Diana said. "He'll be presenting some findings." Victor looked at her. The composure held, but the quality of it was different now. The quality of a man recalculating rather than the quality of a man who is certain. Diana opened the meeting with the procedural items that board meetings always opened with, and Marcus sat at the table with the folder in front of him and watched Victor Price manage the room with the particular skill of a man who had been managing rooms for a long time. Victor was good in a room. He was warm without being performatively warm. He was competent without being condescending. He had the specific quality of a person who made other people feel that their intelligence was being respected while also being guided toward the conclusion he had prepared for them. It was, Marcus thought, genuinely impressive. It was the thing that had made it work for 8 months. You could not be bad at this and do what Victor had done. You had to be very good at it. He thought about what Cass had said. Smooth, he thought about the 47 pages in the folder. Precise, Victor glanced at Marcus twice before the meeting was formally opened, once when he entered, and once when he sat down and saw where Marcus was sitting. The glances were brief and well-managed, nothing that would register to anyone who wasn't watching for them. But Marcus was watching for them. The second glance said, "I need to revise my understanding of what is about to happen in this room." Good, Marcus thought. Let him revise it. The meeting proceeded. Victor presented his emergency governance review. It was, as Diana had said, a good document. 8 months of management decisions laid out in a timeline that, without context, told a compelling story of an executive making erratic, damaging choices. Coordinator terminations, hub restructuring, carrier contract changes, quarterly results that underperformed projections. He presented it with the fluency of someone who had been rehearsing, and he presented it to a room that included 4 board members who had, in the past 10 days, been shown the context. When he finished, Francis Alderman said, "Thank you, Victor. Before we move to discussion, I'd like to hear from Marcus Webb, who has been the Columbus Hub coordinator for the past 6 weeks and who has prepared some materials I believe are relevant to this review." Victor looked at Francis. Marcus presented the findings. Not the 47 pages, the 19 clean pages, the factual document without stated conclusions, and the forensic accountant's preliminary report, which stated its conclusions plainly. He presented it the way he had done everything in the past 6 weeks, accurately, completely, without overstatement, with the distinction between what he knew and what he had inferred made explicit at every point. He presented it with the specific patience of someone who understands that a room full of intelligent people does not need to be convinced by rhetoric when the facts will do it. Victor interrupted twice. Both times he was accurate and procedurally correct in his challenges. He was a good CFO and a good strategic thinker, and the challenges were real ones. Marcus answered both without heat and without defensiveness, because the answers were in the data and the data didn't require heat or defensiveness. The second time Victor interrupted, Francis said, "Victor, let him finish." Victor let him finish. When Marcus was done, the room was quiet for a long time. It was a board member named Gregory Holt, a retired logistics executive, who had been on the board for 9 years and who had known Diana's father, who said finally, "The access trail goes to your workstation, Victor." "That's a preliminary finding," Victor said. "Preliminary findings can be, the access trail goes to your workstation," Gregory said again. The same tone, the same words. The repetition that was not a question. Victor was quiet. "Gerald Oakes brought Diana a spreadsheet in November," Francis said. "You prepared a counter-analysis." Victor said nothing. "You prepared a counter-analysis," Francis said, "that identified errors in Gerald's methodology, and Diana relied on that analysis, and Gerald was let go. And the methodology errors you identified, were they real?" Victor said nothing. Gregory looked at Diana. "You didn't know," he said. No, Diana said. I didn't know. The room held that for a moment. The particular weight of a room that has just been given irreversible information and is reorganizing itself around it. Frances looked at the 19 pages in front of her. 8 months, she said again. Not to anyone specifically. To the fact. 8 months of decisions based on data that was structured to produce specific decisions, Diana said. The coordinator, terminations. The hub restructuring. The carrier contract changes. Each one individually defensible based on the information I had. In aggregate, it looks like executive dysfunction, Frances said. Which is exactly what Victor's governance review document says. Yes, Diana said. Frances looked at Marcus. And what you've built here shows the data was manipulated before it reached her. It shows the pattern, Marcus said. The forensic accountant confirms the source. Frances looked at the pages for a long moment. I was in the board meeting when Victor presented his counter-analysis of Gerald's spreadsheet. I thought Gerald had found a real pattern, but misattributed it. The methodology critique was very credible. It was designed to be, Marcus said. Frances looked at him. You've been here 6 weeks and you found this. Gerald found it first, Marcus said. 11 years ago he found it. He brought it forward. It was dismissed. He paused. I needed it to be the kind of document that couldn't be dismissed the same way. Because if it was dismissed again, with methodology language, with a counter-analysis, then the next person who tried would have 2 dismissals in the record. 2 dismissals becomes the institutional memory. 3 becomes the pattern. I didn't want that to be what this company remembers. Frances was quiet. Gregory said, Gerald Oakes should be contacted. Yes, Diana said. Today? Yes. The room was quiet again. Outside the 14th floor windows, Columbus went on doing what cities do, the traffic on Broad Street, the morning light on the buildings, the ordinary life of a city that did not know what was happening in a conference room above it. Victor left the room with the company's general counsel. He did not come back. The board vote on Diana's position was unanimous. It was not a close vote. It was not a complicated vote. It was the vote of 8 people who had just been shown what 8 months had actually been, and who understood the difference between the story they had been given and the story that was true. Frances Alderman, after the vote, looked at Marcus and said, Gerald Oakes should be contacted. I agree, Marcus said. Can you handle that? He looked at Diana. She looked at him. Yes, he said. He called Gerald Oakes that afternoon from the coordinator station in the Columbus hub, with the freight board behind him and the carrier schedule and the inbound manifests and all the ordinary apparatus of a logistics operation doing what it was supposed to do. Gerald answered on the 3rd ring. He sounded like a man who had been waiting, for a long time, for the particular shape of this call. Marcus told him what had happened. Gerald was quiet for a moment. Then he said, I knew the numbers were wrong. Yes, Marcus said. You were right. Another quiet. I need the job back, Gerald said. I know, Marcus said. That's why I'm calling. The Calloway direct proposal was approved at the same board meeting, unanimously, with a first-year budget allocation and a launch timeline of 90 days. Marcus was named Director of Operations. Diana thanked the board and shook hands and walked back to her office. And when Marcus knocked on the door an hour later, she was at her desk with the Calloway Direct Operations Plan open in front of her, already working. The route map, she said. The Northeast Corridor, you've got the carrier capacity wrong. It should be, I know, he said. I was going to revise it this afternoon. She looked at him. The Northeast Corridor capacity, she said. You know what it should be. Yes, Hal, I talked to the carriers in the 3rd week, he said, before I knew you'd ever see the proposal. She looked at him for the long pause. Then back at the map. Good, she said. He sat down at the conference table. He opened his laptop. They worked. This is not a story about a man who saved a woman. It is a story about a man who recognized a pattern, who arrived in a system that had been corrupted from the inside and saw what the corruption looked like and understood, because he had spent 19 years in logistics, that the only way to fix a broken system was to find the point of failure and address it correctly. Not quickly, Not dramatically, but correctly. It is a story about a woman who had been given false information by the person she trusted most in her professional life, and had made decisions based on that false information, and had believed for 8 months that the decisions were hers, who had fired 11 people she should not have fired, who had stood in her office with a view of the Columbus skyline and carried the weight of those 11 people in the part of herself that kept records and had not found a way to put it down. Gerald Oakes got his job back. Not in the same role. His was one of the positions that had been genuinely restructured, not fraudulently eliminated, and the role as it had existed didn't exist anymore, but a better one. A senior one. One with a title that reflected what he had actually been doing for 11 years, and what his spreadsheet in November had proven he was still capable of doing, seeing the pattern in the numbers when the numbers were telling the truth. Victor Price resigned before the board could move on termination for cause. He hired a lawyer. The lawyer negotiated. The outcome of that negotiation was not public. What was public was the forensic accountant's final report, which was submitted to the Columbus District Attorney's Office in the spring. And what happened after that was not yet complete when this story ends, but was moving, as things do when the pattern has been documented and the documentation is sound, and the direction that things tend to move when the truth is in a form that can be shown. Julia had a post-it note system. Every morning she would leave a note on the refrigerator, not about big things, not about love or grief or the enormous weight of a life, but about specific, durable, necessary things. Don't forget Gracie's recital Thursday. Pick up milk. The car is at the shop until noon. She had been a person who organized her attention by writing down what needed attending to, and what needed attending to was never abstract, always specific, always within reach. The last note said, "Don't forget Gracie's recital Thursday." He had not forgotten. He had gone. He had sat in the second row and watched and thought about Julia and cried with appropriate privacy and taken 20 pictures, and he had carried the note in his wallet for 26 months because it was specific and durable, and it told him what Julia had always known, that the thing in front of you is the thing that needs doing, and you do it, and the doing is what matters. Calloway Direct launched in 90 days. The first route was the Northeast Columbus corridor, the one Marcus had talked to the carriers about in his third week, before he knew the proposal would ever be seen by anyone. The carriers had been waiting for someone to build this. The service gap was real. The first month of operations ran at 93% on-time delivery, which was better than the industry average for a startup subsidiary by 11 points. Marcus told Diana the number on a Thursday morning. She looked at the operational report for a moment. 93. Yes, your target was 90. Yes, she set the report down. How? The carrier relationships were already there, he said. I just stopped treating them like vendors and started treating them like partners. They responded. She looked at him. Gerald Oakes is going to be good at this too, she said. I know, Marcus said. He already understood the carrier relationships better than anyone except Cass. They've been talking. Diana nodded. She had the expression she sometimes got when a thing had gone the right way, and she was deciding how much of the satisfaction of that to allow herself. She allowed herself a measured amount. Tell him the Northeast Corridor numbers, she said. He'll want to know. Already did, Marcus said. She made the sound that was in the neighborhood of a laugh. The legal process involving Victor Price was not fast, and was not clean, and was not the kind of satisfying resolution that arrived in a single definitive moment. It was the kind that happened in increments, in filings and counterfilings and negotiated agreements, in the language of civil and criminal proceedings that moved on the timeline of the legal system rather than the timeline of justice. What Marcus knew, from the updates Diana gave him over the following months, was that the forensic accountant's final report confirmed $4.1 million, and that the district attorney's office had the full documentation, and that the company had filed a civil recovery action. What happened after that was still happening when this story ends. What was finished? Diana knew what had been done. The board knew. The 4 people who had been shown the 19 clean pages knew. Gerald Oakes knew. Cass knew, in the specific way Cass knew things, which was completely and without making a production of it. The people who had needed to know knew, and the people who had made it their business not to know were making different business decisions now. Cass got promoted in January. Hub operations manager. She accepted it with the manner of someone who had expected this to happen eventually, and was pleased that eventually had arrived before she was too old to enjoy it. She sent Marcus a text that said, "Finally." She sent Diana a formal acceptance email. She told Marcus the content of both Over Coffee at the deli 2 blocks from the hub. The same deli where he had told her in the first week that the wrong numbers were coming from inside the house. "You could have left," Cass said. "When? Any time. You'd been here 3 days when you saw it. You could have walked out. Nobody would have blamed you." "I know," he said. "Why didn't you?" He thought about the legal pad, about the first page with the line across it, about Gracie at the kitchen table with her cereal on a thinking morning. It was the kind of problem that had a solution, he said. "I don't leave problems that have solutions." Cass looked at him. "That's a thing you actually believe." "Yes," he said. "Good," she said. She picked up her coffee. "Ridiculous, but good." Diana Calloway came to the next recital. Gracie's class performed in May, the 3rd grade spring concert, with actual instruments this time. Gracie played the xylophone, a fact she had communicated to Diana during a Saturday working session with the gravity of a major development. Diana sat in the second row next to Marcus and watched 26 third graders play the xylophone and the hand drums in a single recorder played by a boy named Tiago, who was, by general agreement, extremely good. She did not cry. She was not a person who cried in public. But she sat very still in the way she sat still when something mattered to her. And at the end, when Gracie came off stage and went directly to Marcus and then looked at Diana and said, "Did you see the xylophone part?" Diana said, "You were the best one." Gracie said, "I know." Marcus made a sound. The yellow post-it note is still in his wallet. It will always be in his wallet. Not because the grief is not moving, not because time does not do what time does, but because specificity is its own kind of love, and a note that says "Don't forget the recital" is a note that says "I believe you will show up." He showed up. Gracie asked one Thursday evening in October what had happened to the bad person at Marcus's work. He thought about how to answer that for a moment. "He's not working there anymore," Marcus said. "And the people who were hurt because of what he did are getting some things put right." "Some things," Gracie said. "Some things can be put right. Some can't." She thought about this with the gravity she brought to things that mattered. "Like the people who got fired," she said. "Some of them are coming back," Marcus said. "Not all. But some. Is that enough?" He thought about Gerald Oakes, who had his job back. About Rosario, who had taken a position at a different company and had, according to Cass, told her new company about the hub metrics she'd built in Columbus and had been given a regional director role within 3 months. About the 11 names. About what enough meant. "It's what's possible," he said. "Doing what's possible is enough. The rest, that's for the legal system and for time." Gracie nodded, with the expression of someone who is filing this under things to revisit. She had a whole filing system of things to revisit. Marcus had learned not to consider a topic closed until Gracie indicated she was done with it. "Dad," she said after a moment. "Yes." The lady with the Silk Road knowledge. "Miss Calloway, is she going to be okay now?" He thought about Diana in the conference room on a Saturday morning with the Calloway direct route map and the carrier capacity numbers and the expression she got when the operations were going right. Not warm, not visibly pleased, but the expression of a person who has returned to the work she built and found it still there, still worth building. "Yes," he said. "She's going to be okay." "Good," Gracie said. "She should come to the recital."